Chapter 44, The Key. The morning sun sparkled on the sea, and the singing of birds was loud. Many were crowded into the tree that winds its way around Angel's Tower. Where the tree had reached the observatory, it bore little star-shaped fruit called starberries. They were only picked once a year at the time of the great celebration. Their sweetness was legendary, and they often caused miraculous healings. Some of the time fairies had gone to sit in the tree with the little birds who dreamed of eating a starberry. The atmosphere was very peaceful that morning as everyone waited for the ending of the story. "We're not quite there yet," said Angel. "My turn," said Blizzard. "Okay," said Angel, "but only because I want a cup of tea." Chapter 44, The Key. And I do want a small sip of tea, so I'm going to. Blizzard continued. Toll finally realised that Ned Loggett wasn't ever going to return his book. It was his name which would return. Well, I think that needs to be, it was his name that would return, in inverted commas, or be written back to front. Toll could have kicked himself for not seeing it earlier. His grandfather had taught him to do cryptic crosswords when he was only 5. In the crossword, clue words were always returning, in inverted commas. "I have the key," he whispered. What do you know about this?" Toll pointed to the pen in his hand. Nell stared at the pen and then exclaimed, "Why didn't I think of that before? Yes, of course." Then Nell wrote onto a piece of paper, "Put the pen away in case anyone comes." Toll carefully put the pen back into his pocket while Nell tapped away at the computerized catalogue and then ran along the shelves looking for a particular book. "Here we are," she gasped. "I've got it." Toll read the book's cover. "The Book of Endings, password required." "I can change history in here," she whispered. "Everything written by a valid author in this book will change what happens in the training manual." Nell turned the Book of Endings to its first page. Every word was typed in golden print. It read, "These pages may only be written upon by an author." Well, I think we need to say a legitimate author. "A legitimate author with a valid password. The password must be entered on the official password page at the end of the book, but both the password and every other word written must be printed carefully in ink made from fire gold. Every new entry must follow on immediately after the last entry made. The last entry was made on page 247. Please proceed directly to that page after completing the password section." Both Nell and Toll exchanged glances after reading this page. "It's an electronic book," whispered Nell, "and it has a personality of its own. Can you lend me your pen?" Without waiting a moment longer, Nell wrote her password onto the special password page. How can it be an electronic book and she's writing in it? I think that doesn't make sense and I'll have to fix that up. Just one moment. "It's a magical book," whispered Nell, "and it has a personality of its own. Can you lend me your pen?" Without waiting a moment longer, Nell wrote her password onto the special password page. When she attempted to turn to page 247, however, it was as if all the pages of the book were glued together, and golden smoke started to billow from around the edges of the book. From within the smoke, a tiny golden angel appeared. "I'm the guardian of the Book of Endings," he said sternly. "Because your password is not valid, I've closed the book to you. Any further attempts to access this book's pages are denied to you." "But, sir," I created the Book of Endings, said Nell sternly. And I invented my own password, so how can it be wrong? Madam, I'm sorry, but you also invented me. I have to abide by the rules you set, said the angel. May I ask who was the last person to access this book? Asked Nell, wishing she could see the password page, but it was completely covered in smoke. You may ask, said the angel, but I can't answer. Nell turned to Toll. Probably Thieve, although I don't know how, but someone has accessed this book and changed the rules about passwords, said Nell. Toll sank to the ground and put his hands in his head in his hands. At first he felt so hopeless that he could have cried, but then a strange new feeling began to consume him. Hateful thoughts filled his mind, and he wanted to find Overlord Thieve and really hurt him. Then, as if a knife had cut through his middle, he realized how awful the thoughts were making him feel, and he remembered the word Dirtar. Mum, he said quickly, help me think Dirtar about Overlord Thieve. Please, hurry. He was a wonderful man when he was younger, said Nell. His first Imagineering project was to create an electronic database for all imaginations. He worked very hard to prevent the extermination of kangaroo mice, and when they first escaped into tunnels and started breeding, and he was the one who encouraged Asmax and Xavier to pursue their time travel experiments. Also, I know that he tried to help my father when he was very sad about Imagineering. He spent hours and hours with him. I know that much. Good, said Toll. We will get out of this fix. I was just getting overcome by hatred for the Overlord. Mum, he whispered, quickly, help me think Dirtar about Overlord Thieve. Hurry, please. He was a wonderful man when he was younger, said Nell. His first Imagineering project was to create an electronic database for all imaginations. He worked very hard to prevent the extermination of kangaroo mice when they first escaped into the tunnels and started breeding. And he was the one who encouraged Asmax and Xavier to pursue their time travel experiments. Also, I know that he tried to help my father when he was very sad about Imagineering. He spent hours and hours with him. I know that much. Good, said Toll. We will get out of this fix. I was just getting overcome by hatred for the Overlord. Said Nell. That will only corrupt your own heart. Well done for stopping it. Doesn't mean the Overlord is good now, though, said Toll. No, it does not, said Nell, looking fierce. Toll stood up again and stared at the Book of Endings. The angel looked at him with a smile, and at that very moment, Toll had a thought. He said aloud, when all looks lost, don't be cross, just turn it on its head. What? Asked Nell. Something Solo told me. He had to learn it in his training. Godot took him to the home of the Princess of Magic Sea Dragons, and she gave him another riddle for me, but she said that this time I was allowed to tell anyone about the riddle as long as they're a safe person. And this is it. When all looks lost, don't be cross, just turn it on its head. Nell nodded. If you please, sir, said Toll, peering right into the face of the little golden angel, could we turn the Book of Endings around the other way? That's tricky, said the angel. There's nothing in the rules to say that you can, but there's nothing in the rules to say that you can't. So, Nell looked at the little angel with a smile. Please. All right, said the angel, but you're not turning me on the head, that's for sure. No, just the book, said Toll. It either needs to be turned upside down so that these two pages are up the other way, with the page numbers at the top, or it needs to go right over so we can see the cover again. Toll spun the book around so that the angel's back was towards him. Wow, do that again, said the angel. I love merry-go-rounds. There, said Nell. Sure enough, in the fine print, in the margin of what had been the bottom of the page, there was a message. It had been illegible before because when the pages were up the other way, the message was upside down. And because it was written inside the leafy decorations surrounding the page, it had remained quite hidden. The message read, "Old passwords will only be valid if they are written in the midst of these leaves." "Yes," whispered Nell. In the fire gold ink, Nell wrote her password carefully among the leaves on the page, causing the angel to rise up and do a little dance in midair before disappearing. This left the book upside down, but otherwise completely usable. Nell kissed Toll on the head before turning to page 247. There she wrote, Overlord Thief did not Overlord Thief did not ever become an honorary author of the Manual of Virtual Worlds because he broke the golden rule of authorship, which is to respect those about whom and for whom one is writing. Overlord Thief could only ever leave the manual under escort. Overlord Thief is only ever permitted to leave the manual under official escort and is banned from ever receiving a personal pass out. Instead, Overlord Thief shall be touched by Halo's wings in order to be frozen. Instead, Halo is permitted to touch Overlord Thief with his wings in order to freeze the Overlord's movements for any length of time determined by Halo. Unfortunately for Overlord Thief, it is permissible for him to be frozen in the middle of the Magran town square, where he may be subjected to a week's worth of ridicule and scorn from the Nix and Equins living there. This all happens after Halo gets up from the ground, miraculously recovering from his horrible beating with an atlas in the by Overlord Thief in the library. The sign in the Magran town square, Halo erects a sign above Overlord Thief's head. It says, "This overlord thought himself so grand that he could rule the world, but he made others feel so small that in the end he had to be reduced himself to stop his terrible cruelty." The townspeople seemed to think it was a wonderful joke. Two of the kings ran an enormous length of chain through the overlord's folded arms and then formed the chain into a gigantic circle. After that, someone scrawled across Halo's notice, "Magal's good luck charm?" While Overlord Thieve was sitting like stone for a week, Halo went to the living creatures to report everything that had happened. The Overlord was dreading a visit from the living creatures because he'd heard that they sometimes come to interview people who've been traitors to the Imagineering way of life. When Halo returned to Magran, though, he wasn't with any living creatures. He arrived in an enormous gust of wind, which seemed to be getting worse and worse, but everyone knew that it wasn't a wind at all. It was Magal, come to claim his gigantic good luck charm. Remember, none of this happened yet. I'll just write there, note from Toll and Jax. Remember, none of this had happened yet while Toll and Nell were still in the oh dear, sorry. Remember, none of this had happened yet while Toll and Nell were still in the library in the book. But it was going to happen, and soon. Suddenly there was a crash near one of the library shelves. Okay, I'll have to re-record that because I spoke so slowly, but I'll re-record it soon.